Hello, Ray here, and today I'm going to talk about getting a really clean reverb on really dirty basses and configuring it in such a way that it's only active when the bass amplitude is low. So the amount of reverb is inversely proportional to how intense the bass is at any given moment. And so let's just take a listen at these basses to start in the context of a full track. Now, if we listen to the basses in isolation, we can hear how subtle the reverb actually is, and it's just filling out space when the bass really isn't there. So let's just play it in isolation. All right, that should be enough to give the idea. And just to listen to it dry really quick, the bass here is dry. So just to give a bit of comparison about how it sounds dry and wet. Now, in the full track, the reverb does kind of get lost a bit. That is intentional. It's just filling out space, and the effect overall should be subliminal to an extent. We don't want it to be too apparent, and we don't want it to sound washed out. We don't want the reverb to destroy the bass. We just want the bass to feel like it's sitting in a natural space, but still have all the clarity that it does. And so the first step to that is actually to open up a patcher instance. And then we're going to process this reverb in parallel. And the reverb I have is Rome. And I have it cranked, the mix amount cranked up to 100%. So this is just sending out a 100% wet reverb signal. It's a small size, reasonable medium length decay. But what I have here is a Fruity Peak controller that's measuring the peaks of, or it's measuring the amplitude envelope of the bass and converting that to a value between 0 and 1 so that I can feed it into this Fruity formula controller. And here what I have is a formula is 0.8 minus this A knob, and that A knob is being controlled by the Fruity Peak controller. So whenever the bass is active and the Fruity Peak controller is sending a signal that's high, the formula controller here is kind of inverting that. It's taking 0.8 and subtracting whatever that value is and feeding it into the balance. So when the bass is not active, we have the volume fully up at 0.0 dB. But if I start playing this, you'll see the volume drop when the bass is really intense. So this volume knob is kind of inverse of what's going on with the bass. Whenever the bass is active, or like really active, this volume knob is down, and the reverb is not interfering with the dry signal. But as the bass tapers off, then the reverb opens up, and the reverb is allowed to carry on a bit when the actual bass isn't playing. And so the reverb doesn't interfere with the bass samples that I already put in there. A bit more about this is that I have a simple EQ here just to remove all the low end so that the reverb itself doesn't sound really muddy. Whatever comb filtering and delay might be behind the reverb, that's not going to affect the low end or cause for a muddy low end. And the reason why I do this with EQ and not within the reverb itself is actually I feel I have more control with an EQ, either pre or post the reverb. You can control the slope of, so you can control the slope, how aggressive you're cutting at a particular frequency, and you have much more control over where the frequency is. So for Roam here, it doesn't even tell me where the cutoff point is. It just tells me how much I'm cutting off if I twiddle these knobs. And in Fruity Reverb 2, it does let me specify the frequency that I want to cut at. However, if I open up the help, let's see. Yeah, it has this low cut parameter, but it doesn't tell me how steep the cutoff is. So even working with EQ2, Fruity EQ2, it doesn't necessarily tell me the slope, but it lets me know if it's gentle or steep when I'm modulating it here. So for that reason, I feel that working with EQs before a reverb is a better best practice than using the cutoffs within the reverb themselves, because you have more control with an EQ plus a reverb than just using the filtering built into the reverbs that you're using. So yeah, that's how to get a clean reverb on really dirty respaces. And I guess most of this tutorial is really focusing on this P controller through the formula controller affecting this gain knob and making sure that the gain is only active when the bass is off. So the reverb tail turns on when the bass isn't playing, and then it cuts out so the reverb doesn't create muddiness or just noise within the bass through all the subtle phase cancellations that you get when you add a reverb and a dry signal together. So I hope you found this tutorial useful. Let me know in the comments if this was confusing or if I didn't articulate or explain anything very well. But yeah, thanks, and catch you in the next one.